this is your teacher homepage, okay? When you log in, this is what you will see every time. The students don't see the same view, okay? You do, and only you do, okay? So, when you're looking at your teacher homepage, one thing that I love about iReady is that it is based on a tab system, so it's pretty easy to navigate. Everything is a tab within a tab. You can't really get lost because it's all pre-labeled. Everything on the left side here, I guess my right side, is has to do with the diagnostic. Okay, this guy right down here is actually going to be really helpful for you guys as you're giving the assessment, because that will let you know which students have either not completed or have not started the diagnostic yet. Maybe you got a kid that was absent today, you were giving it, whatever it might be. We'll talk about specifics to the diagnostic, but it can be started and stopped at any point in time, and it will save the place of wherever that student is at. So when you're giving the diagnostic, don't feel like they have to complete the whole thing in one sitting, and we don't recommend doing that either. Doesn't matter if they're a kindergartner or an 8th grader, don't make them sit through the whole thing in one sitting, because you will not get the best results if you do that. We're going to talk about some of the ins and outs of the diagnostic in just a moment. Everything in the middle has to do with the online instructional piece, okay? Talk about those when we get to the online instructional piece here in just a moment. And then everything else on the right-hand side there talks about the growth monitoring and looking at the reports from that standpoint, all right? Once your students are put in, that'll be done behind the scenes. You do not have to put your student's name and all that stuff together. That will be done for you through us once we get the information from your district, okay? Once it is given to you, however, you will want to print out their usernames and passwords. So if you go to your roster tab, now you will only have 2 classes assigned to you unless you are like a special education teacher, you are a reading specialist where you may have multiple groups, things like that. But you'll only have 2. So for each grade, you'll have 1 for reading and 1 for math, since you have both parts, okay? All you have to do is you select the class. You only have to do this for 1 because the usernames and passwords will be the same for reading and for math, so it doesn't matter, okay? You just click edit next to the name of the class. Right here where it says print passwords, when you click on that, a PDF will pop up that will give you the students' usernames and passwords. And you just print it out, and there it is. Now, what I will say for K1 is we actually have a new sign-on that if you choose to use it, I would highly recommend it, by the way. It makes it a lot easier for the little ones to try and log in and do this, because based on feedback, and one thing I can say about CA is we rely heavily on your feedback as users, and we make changes based on that feedback. And I'm not just saying that as lip service, we actually do. And one of the biggest changes that we have coming this year is the K1 sign-on. The students will actually be given a class code as opposed to a username and password. So it's a 6-digit number that is all the same for the teacher's classroom. They type that in. They will then search for their name. It'll be first name, first initial of their last name, and they click on it. Their name has a little like symbol code. It's 3 different symbols. They type it in and they're done. They don't have to remember a whole long username and password like everything else. If you had seen our old login system, it was very hard for K1 to do that, especially at the beginning of the year, because I mean we're happy if they come in and sit down in the first month, much less trying to type in like a huge username and password. So the sign in and the login is much easier for K1 now. It's just you click here, click on a couple symbols, and you're done. And that can be used no matter what, whether it's for online instruction, the diagnostic, whatever it may be. Okay. All right. So with regard to printing those, and you will want to your turnover and your information being put in the system will be done in plenty of time before the beginning of the school year, so you can have those printed out and ready to go, so that if you want to give it on the first day, that's up to you. But you're more than welcome to do that, and those will be available before then for you to print out and be ready to go. Okay. All right. Where I'm going to go right now is under the Reports tab. So if you're following along, I do happen to be a happy clicker, so tell me to slow down if I'm going too fast. All right. We're going to stay in Class Reports right up here, and then I'm going to click on Class Profile. Now the login that I gave you is an elementary login, so it only goes through 5th grade. If you want a middle school login, I can give that to you for the middle school folks. I'm going to choose, actually, I'm going to go down. I'm going to choose 4th grade reading just because of the differences in how the reading report is. If you want to look at math, I can switch over in just a moment as well. I'm going to choose 4th grade reading. I'm not changing anything else here, and then I'm going to click Create Report.
Will the reports only show up for our own students, or will we see a whole list of everybody's reports in there?
As a teacher, you will only see your class, ever. If you have an admin login, you will be able to see everybody's. But if you're just a teacher, you'll just see your classroom. Okay. A couple changes. Well, actually, you guys won't see it this year because you're a new user this year. But after this year, we've actually included historical data in the class reporting. So after this year, when you get a new batch of students in 18-19, you'll actually see how the students performed in your class last year, so you can see that historical data report as well. Yes?
I have a quick question. What's the procedure for adding new students?
Okay, so you guys are not auto-provisioned as far as I know, so that would be done through like a building admin, unless there's like a different procedure where it goes through like say Mary or something like that. I'm not sure of the actual procedure, but all you would have to do is just let them know, hey, we got a new student. And honestly, 9 times out of 10, they'll probably already know that ahead of time and already have them ready to go. In order for them to do anything, though, they have to take the diagnostic first. So when they log in the first time, the only thing available will be the assessment. So that is something to think about. You know, if you get a new kiddo in September or October, they have to take the test before they can do anything else.
Okay.
But I would assume that at the district level, somebody would know, hey, the student is coming to Miss Smith, whatever, let's get them put in the system so that they can rock and roll on day one. That'll probably be part of the orientation piece, I would think. Yeah. All right. Couple things to point out at the very top. You'll notice these buttons up here. This is your friend. Don't use your browser back button because it will log you out every time. Always use the orange back button to go back to your reports or anything else. Okay? You can print and save any of the reports that we're going to look at today. If you so desire, everything saves as a printable PDF. Okay? As I scroll down here, first thing that you'll notice is what I like to call my 15,000 foot view. Okay? This is how my whole class performed overall on the diagnostic. How many are more than 1 grade level below, 1 grade level below, or on an above grade level. What I love about this piece is it gives me a very quick snapshot of how did my class perform overall, and where is my highest area and where is my lowest area of need. As I'm looking at this, what I notice right away is my kiddos really struggle. Only about a quarter of my kiddos are really where I need them to be as it relates to nonfiction comprehension. What I also notice is that I have NA here, which is a good thing, because remember, phonological awareness and high frequency words are not assessed at the 4th grade level. So that tells me, okay, my kids are basically where I need them to be as it relates to these areas. Now, a couple things though I notice is I have 4 students, excuse me, I have 4 students that are 2 grade levels below in phonics. Well, what happened then? Well, it doesn't mean that they didn't see high frequency words. It just means that they did well enough in that domain that they won't receive any online instruction. They're doing okay. Doesn't mean that they're not struggling in phonics though, because I got 4 kids that are at a 2nd grade level right now in phonics. Okay? So again, it's all based on how the students perform. They may be okay in sight words because those are all done in isolation. So, you know, kind of keeping that in mind. It doesn't, you know, they may be great word callers, but when it comes to using them in context or in multi-meaning words, maybe that's where they're struggling. That's why they're where they're at with that piece. Okay? So I can see right away how my whole class performed. As I then scroll down to the next level, I'm looking at kind of my 10,000 foot view now. Here's how my whole class performed individually on each one of the domains going across the top. Okay? A couple things to think about here from a teacher perspective, and I know a lot of this is probably going to be a dust statement, so bear with me. But we all love our triangle because it's pretty great, especially during the holidays, red, yellow, green. The problem is, prior to a assessment like this, and you may be familiar with other adaptive assessments. I don't know where you guys are coming from with that. But prior to other assessments, we would get our pretty triangle, but we never really knew what it meant. Okay, great. I got a kid in the green. So I'm assuming right now, as that student's teacher, I'm assuming that Avis is just knocking it out of the park. I was a little concerned coming into this 4th grade year, but based on this, she's in the green, so I don't have to worry about Avis because she's on grade level. We're going to worry about those kiddos that are in the yellow and red because those are the ones that are struggling. But now I have a document, I have an assessment, I have something that tells me a little bit more about Avis. She may be in the green overall, but as I'm looking across, wait a minute, whoa, what's happening here? Okay, I know now Avis is struggling in vocabulary and nonfiction comprehension, and more specifically, she's struggling at 2 grade levels below. So overall, she may be in the green. Overall, she may be in the green, but the reality is she actually does have some holes and gaps that need to be filled. Now, what I will say is this is an extreme case because it's made up data. More likely than not, she would not be at a 6th grade level because she's multiple levels below where I need her to be. What is pushing her a little bit ahead is the fact that in her foundational skills, she's above where I need her to be, and she's actually above where she needs to be in her fictional comprehension. Probably would not be placed at a 6th grade level in reality, but for our purposes, so just bear with me on how this looks because it is made up data. But what I'd like to point out is just because your students are in the green does not mean that overall that kid is knocking it out of the park. There may still be some holes and gaps and some speed bumps along the way that tell you, whoa, something's happening. She's a great word caller because her high frequency words are right where it needs to be. Her phonics is perfectly fine. However, the use of that in context of something else, and more specifically in her fictional or nonfiction comprehension, is a struggle. A couple reasons I used reading at a 4th grade level was for the different wording here. You have 2 different ways of looking at your data. Test it out and max score. Do you have any 8th grade folks? 7th, 8th grade? Okay. You may see this a little bit in math as well because our instruction does not go above an 8th grade level. The assessment does. So you may see like level 9, level 10, things like that. There may be some areas where they assess out. Okay, so I just like to point that out above those levels as well. Tested out max score essentially mean the same thing. Here's the difference between the two. Tested out means they never saw any questions in that domain. They do not need any online instruction or additional assistance. Nothing will be provided. Max score means they did see questions, but they got the highest score possible. Again, no further assistance is needed. So, the reason I point that out is they should see phonics questions because that's assessed K2, or I'm sorry, K4. But they should never see questions here because those are above the grade level they're currently in. But if I see max score here instead of tested out, it's just kind of a red flag for me that tells me, okay, they're struggling in something else, maybe vocabulary, maybe phonics, whatever it might be, because they saw questions, even though they got the max score, they tested out, whatever, it doesn't mean that they're not struggling somewhere else. Does that make sense? So kind of keep that in mind as you're looking at your data. Max score and tested out essentially mean they won't receive any online instructions, they're doing okay, everything is fine and dandy. However, they are going to struggle a little bit with regard to these pieces as well. Okay? From this point, a couple things that I can also do. You'll notice these arrows up here at the top. I can sort my data very quickly using that function as well, those kind of things. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and click on Avis. So if you're following along, I'm clicking on Avis Chavez, about 5th one down. And what that's going to do is it's going to take me to her student profile report. So I went from a big overview, whole class, individual students within my class. Now I'm coming down to about a 5,000 foot view here. I'm now just looking at one child as it relates to just that child's score. Okay? You get this for reading as well as in math. All right? And what I can see is that overall, Avis is doing okay. But as I scroll down a little bit further, I'm noticing some X's. Noticing some areas where she's struggling a little bit. So I need to get a little bit more information as to what that means exactly. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down here, and I get what's called a developmental analysis. Now I love this piece for several reasons. One, I'm a data nerd, so I really like looking at it, but more specifically, it tells me what she was tested on and where to begin instruction with her right away. So I can look at her vocabulary or her comprehension section, and it's going to tell me, assesses her understanding of informational text. This indicates that she needs instruction in informational skills and strategies such as identifying author's purpose, comparing important points in two texts, compare, contrast, and identifying cause-effect relationships, as well as retelling facts and ideas. Okay? That's a lot of really great information just on that one child. Okay? So I at least have a starting point to know where to begin, what I need to do for her to get her up to speed. It also lets me know where those holes and gaps are as it relates to just her data. Yes?
These statements that you see here, are those blanket statements for not passing level 2, or are they very, very specific to the type of question she answered at that time?
Good question. So with regards to the developmental analysis, it's fairly generic, blanketed statement for where she's performing at that particular level. When we get into her actual student report, which we're going to do in just a second, it'll be more specific to her and the sub-skills. Okay, but this is at least giving me an idea of where to begin with her as it relates to that data point. Okay, so what I want to do then is I want to scroll up here, and I'm going to click on where it says informational text. And what this is going to do for me then is give me that more specific that you were looking for. So based on just the generic, what I got from the developmental analysis, I can now see what she can do, where she's proficient as it relates to informational text, and where to begin instruction. So when it's saying comparing and contrasting or identifying cause and effect at a level 2 level, what does that mean? Well, she needs to identify the cause and the effect within that story. More specifically, it might be in a magazine article, it might be in a scientific article, it could be, if we're talking social studies, what were some of the causes of the Civil War, or what were some of the causes of this particular landform being created, those type of things. Cause and effect. Looking at the 5W questions, whatever it may be as it relates to her data. Once I've chosen 2 or 3 goals for her, I don't want to overwhelm her right now, maybe one from each section even, something to that effect. Something that relates to what we're working on this quarter, whatever it might be. I'm then also given what we call tools for instruction. Okay? These tools for instruction are not just a bulleted list of ideas. These are full out lesson plans on that sub-skill at that student's level. So this is a 2nd grade lesson that is specific to cause and effect that I can do with her in small group, or I could hand off to a resource teacher or an interventionist or something like that they could work on her with. So I now have targeted resources that are standards-based that are going to help me to help her get her to that next level as it relates to her areas of need. It's a starting point, okay? But it's a place where I can begin with her so that I don't have to pull my hair out trying to figure out where I'm going to get 2nd grade resources. Right here. These are all set up with best practices. I do, we do, you do, with a check for understanding. If anything is introduced like a graphic organizer, let's say, that will also be provided for you. So here's a graphic organizer that I'm introducing to her that relates to cause and effect. At the bottom of this document, then on page 3, there's the chart. So I don't also have to recreate those graphic organizers. Those are provided for you within the document as well. And again, these are all printable PDFs, so I don't have to format, I don't have to do anything. It's right here. I'm ready to rock and roll from day one. Question? Question? All right. So, We try to give you as much as we can to get started with the student based on how they performed and where they are at, so that you're not trying to figure that out for yourself and gather additional assessments and additional pieces and those kind of things. But here's the only issue with this. This is great for her, but I need that for the other 25 that I also have to work with in my classroom on a regular basis as well. Well, that's where I'm going to hit my back button twice. So if you're following along, hit my orange back button. And where I'm going to go now, I'm back to class reports. Keep that in mind. And I'm going to go to instructional grouping profile. Now, we talked about this before. Keep in mind that the instructional grouping profile takes, well, in my case, 40 kids, 41 kids, but hopefully you don't have that many in your class. But it takes all of those students and it puts them into 5 profiles based on how they performed on the diagnostic. So it takes all of those students, so I don't have to try and figure this out for myself, which when I did do it, it took like 3 weeks, and then by the time we got it together, the groups changed. It's instantaneous. As soon as your kiddos are done, all of these reports are done for you. Okay? So based on this information, profile 1 and 2 are any student who falls below in phonics. Okay? Any student who's below level in phonics is placed in profile 1 or 2 because that's a foundational skill. Then we pull it out even further and say 1 grade level below in vocabulary, profile 2, 2 or more, profile 1. Okay? These could also be students who are on grade level in vocabulary, but they're below level in phonics. And it may only be a grade level below, but they're still not where we need them to be. Okay? Because your students as a 4th grade student should be at an early to probably mid 4th grade level at this point. Some max out, but not all of them will. As long as they're on or above grade level, they're going to be here. If they're below grade level, they're going to be up here. Okay? Profile 3, 4, and 5, they have the foundational skill, but they're struggling somewhere else. Either comprehension, vocabulary, or both. Okay? Profile 5, they're on and above in everything. They're your accelerated group, so they're ready to move on. And the beauty of iReady is you're also providing resources for them, because sometimes that's a hard group to meet as well. Those kiddos that are on or above grade level in everything, and now you have to find resources that are above their level, sometimes that's even harder to find than it is the below level, because we're used to working with below level folks. We have that information for you as well. So you have the full spectrum as it relates to all of the students in your class. So when I think about Avis, where should I expect to find her on this spectrum here? She was fine in phonics. She was actually max scored in phonics. She's struggling in vocabulary and comprehension, so where am I going to find her? Profile 3. Because she has a limited vocabulary, she's 2 or more grade levels below there, and in nonfiction comprehension, she's also 2 grade levels below. So, as I scroll down, sure enough, there she is. Now, if I wasn't sure about this, if I went here before I got to it from the student report, I could click on her name and it would take me right to her student report here again. I'm going to focus on profile 1 for just a moment, because when your students take this assessment for the first time, it could just be test anxiety, it could be a new test, I don't know how to answer these questions, those type of things. You're going to notice that it's going to be more lopsided. You're going to see a lot more kiddos in profile 1 and 2 probably at the first time they take it, as opposed to throughout the year or in year 2 and so on. Okay? So I'm going to focus on profile 1 because I have such a large group of students there. I have 11, so that's about a quarter of my class is in profile 1. So here's the struggle I always hear when I come back for understanding data. Half of my class is in profile 1, what am I supposed to do? Because that's a reality. That's a reality no matter what, because a lot of times we find out that a majority of our kiddos are below level. Well, that's where I can come in here now. Now I'm just looking at those 11 students as it relates to just their data. So now I can break down those 11 students a whole lot easier than I can all 40 of them. And I can start breaking them into much smaller chunks. I can take those 11 and say I've got 3 that are working on this, 3 that are working on that, or 4, 4, and 4, or however I want to break that down. And I can sort my data, I can look at the levels that they're at, and make more targeted decisions based on how they performed on that assessment piece. Once I've identified who they are and what I want to work on, I can come down here and I have priorities for instruction in phonics and in vocabulary, because those are the 2 areas that profile focuses on. It's only focused on those foundational skills because that's what I need to get in control before I can move forward with the other stuff. Okay? So I can hit some targeted instruction based on where they need to perform. And then once I figure out what the goals are for that small group, I also have tools for instruction for them as well. So I know right away what I need to work on, who I need to work with, and I have the instruction that's going to guide me at the beginning to get them moving toward a much happier place. Okay? Don't have to guess anymore. Don't have to go to TPT. It's all right here. And it's all based on that one diagnostic assessment. That's why it's so important that they're taking their time, they're not rushing through it, those type of things. Now I keep saying rush, because you will have happy clickers, especially the little ones that, again, we're just happy that by October they come in and sit down at their desk. So you're going to have your happy clickers. You know, you're going to do your teacher thing and say, you know, hey, slow down a little bit. You know, it's not the first one done gets 100 kind of thing. So just slow down. You know, I want you to do your best. Or maybe this isn't your happy day. Maybe you just need to log out. And we'll come back tomorrow when we find our happy place, okay? And just have them log out. Again, they can log out and log back in. They can start and stop that assessment at any time. It'll just start them right back with the next question, so they don't have to finish one section or move on or any of those things. But it will be important that they do understand that it's really important that they slow down and they take their time, because everything you're looking at from here forward is based on that. Yes, ma'am?
Can they go back and change?
It's a great question. Not on the diagnostic, no. Because it's an adaptive assessment, if I let, you know, if Chris is taking it and then he's just clicking away, like, just slow down, and I want to go back 3 questions, that's going to change every question I see moving forward if I got it right or wrong. So as this part goes, they cannot go back and forth through the assessment, no.
So you can't invalidate that and like have them retake it? I mean, like if you knew they just
that is
blew
great
it on
question.
purpose.
Yeah. So they can retake the diagnostic.
Okay.
They just can't go back and forth through
Okay.
questions on the diagnostic. But if they complete the diagnostic, and you know, Chris is a 6th grade student, but he performed at a 1st grade level, and you're like, dude, really? Okay. Have fun with that 1st grade lesson that you're going to be bored with because you don't, you know, we need to try again.
Okay.
And you know, you can reassign a diagnostic, but they can't go back and forth through it. Yes. Now, if you notice it before they complete the diagnostic, you can actually have them stop and reset it. But once it's completed, they have to just retake the whole thing. The main difference there would be, in that case, Chris would have 2 assessments during that testing window, whereas everyone else would only have 1. But as soon as I take that second one, it overrides the old data at any point in time. So a new test will always override whatever was done first, or last, I should say, within that queue. But you'll see two assessment types in there. You'll just have to pay attention to test 2 and not test 1. Which actually brings me to another good point. I don't know what your testing window is right now. I'm assuming it's probably like from, we'll say, the 2nd week of school for 4 weeks or something to that effect. All students really need to be completed within that assessment window, barring a student who comes in after the fact, obviously. But any student who starts a school year really needs to finish that assessment within that window. And the reason I say that is, as you're looking at your data, if you have a student who takes the assessment outside that window, you just have to change how you look at it. It just makes it a little bit more muddy to look at the data that way. We can talk more about that when I come back in September, but it's going to be really important that all students complete the diagnostic within the assessment window that you guys have, so it's easier for you to look at that data. If we need to extend the window, we can do that on our end. We just need to know ahead of time. If you think 4 weeks isn't enough, we really need 6 weeks or 8 weeks, whatever it might be. Especially at the beginning of the year, sometimes the windows are a little bit bigger than they are, say, in January or in May, because your kids are used to it by then, that type of thing. But just some things to think about as you're going through. All right. Questions so far? Yes.
How long is one diagnostic assessment? How long will it take the students to finish it?
Yeah. We generally say K2, K1 takes about 30 to 45 minutes based on the student, things like that, because they're assessing, different domains, things like that. 2 through 8 or 2 through 12, about 45 to 60 minutes. I will say those times are pretty accurate. Like I said, I have a first grader and a third grader at home. So I have both ends of those spectrums, and that's pretty accurate.
Is that
Again,
for each math and each reading?
math and reading both, yes. 60 minutes for each subject, or 45 minutes for each subject. That is why I do not recommend, we don't recommend having them take it all in one sitting. I know sometimes it's a little bit harder at the middle school level, since you guys probably have a block schedule, things like that. But if you can help it, to get the best results possible, at least 2 testing periods per subject would be recommended. In between each domain, there's a little brain break that's built in. At the lower levels, it's a little dog, it flies around in a spaceship. It's a lot of fun, actually. It only lasts about maybe 10, 15 seconds. It's not real long, but it does give them a chance to go, okay, now I'm ready for the next piece. At the higher levels, we just do some best practices around some breathing techniques and things to kind of just let them kind of calm down and then be ready for the next section. So if you see that happening, they're not on a different website, it's all part of the testing environment. But it also gives you an opportunity to say, okay, that's the first, doggy game, whatever, after the next one they need to stop or whatever it might be. But, let them know they can log out and log back in at any time to save their place. Okay. All right. Why don't we take a little break here? I've been talking a lot and you guys have been sitting a while. So when we come back, I'm going to actually have you take the diagnostic, get a chance to kind of experience what the item types look like. We'll talk about that, and then we'll get into the online instruction and get you guys out of here on time. Why don't we meet back 9:25, about 10-ish, 5-10 minutes, give you a chance to go to the bathroom and walk around.